Hey songwriters, welcome back to the studio. It's Dean, and today I am really excited to share an interview with Jonathan Ogden.
Surrender it all, let you take control, slow down.
Jonathan is a music artist and a graphic designer who really aims to express his faith through art. So I think today's interview is going to be a really big encouragement for those of you who want to do the same. Let's dive in. Well, Jonathan, first of all, just thank you so much for taking the time. It's really cool to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So before we really get into any questions, Jonathan, why don't you share just kind of who you are, what you're about with those who may not know you here on the channel?
Yeah, so my name's Jonathan. I'm a musician, songwriter, kind of graphic designer at the same time. So I dabble in many creative things. But yeah, that's kind of my full-time thing. Yeah.
So let's back up a little bit, if you're willing to, and just share some of your story of how you got to where you are today, how you got into music, and really how you started expressing your faith through the arts.
Yeah. So I'm like the youngest in quite a big family and quite a musical family. So all my other brothers and sisters played instruments, and I've grown up in church. My dad was a church leader and been a part of like the church worship team and all that stuff. So that was very much part of my upbringing. And I from a very early age knew that I loved creative stuff, and I got really into animation, graphic design, and was fully intending on pursuing design as like my career. So I went to study that at college, got a job with a Christian organisation as their kind of in-house designer, helping them with web design and that kind of stuff. And for me, music was always my side project. It was like something that I enjoyed doing, but it was basically like my evenings and weekends, and just sitting at home trying to come up with some different ideas. But I found that over time I started to write these choruses and simple songs, and just experiment with like what it would be like to express these kind of songs and worship that I was doing in church, but with a style of music that was more kind of natural to what I listen to and what I write, which was more, I guess, like folk, indie, bit of electronic in there. And that kind of experiment led into Rivers and Robots as a project, and I made the first 2 albums literally in my bedroom with a laptop while I was still working full-time as a designer. And I met all the guys that joined the band through working there as well. So basically over lunch breaks, I was just chatting to some of the other team, and met a bunch of guys who we all shared the same music taste and played different instruments. And I was like, all right, let's give this a go and figure out how we can play these songs live. And from there, like the 3rd album we did, All Things New, was the first one we did as a full band and using real instruments and not just me with a MIDI keyboard. And yeah, it kind of like took off from there. We put an album out on Noise Trade when that was kind of just picking up, and felt like we wanted to give it away for free. And it ended up on the front page of the website and had like 20,000 downloads in the first week. And we were like, okay, people are actually listening to this now. And then just responded to invites. Like people would email us saying, can you come play here? And had our first trips outside the UK, and very much just like learn on the job. We were all just really young guys making music and had no experience playing live or doing any of this stuff, but we just learned it as we went, and eventually got to a point where it was so busy that we were taking time off our jobs and having to take unpaid time off work just to go and do all this band stuff. And we all felt like it was time to go full time with it and really step out and go for it with the music. And so we ended up quitting our jobs, and we set up a new organisation called Set Sail, which is just fully focused around creativity and art and faith. And the band is like our main project, but then there's a lot of other parts to that as well. But it was like our way of, we were either saying we could sign a record deal or we could just go out independently and try and figure out how this thing works. So we decided to go that route, and I've been doing that ever since. So been doing it full time 5 years now, I think.
So I've got to follow a bit of that progress and that process, being a listener to Rivers and Robots, and also then connecting to Set Sail. So how would you say that you stay true to your vision, or what you feel like is your God-given calling, when you're receiving some accolades and some attention? You have a lot of Spotify listeners a lot of YouTube listeners or viewers, I guess, you have a record deal with Running Club Records.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of stay focused and stay true when all that's going on?
Yeah. I think it's been a very slow build for us. And I think that's been a good thing. I think the kind of overnight success thing can be like a blessing and a curse at the same time sometimes, because I think there's a lot of lessons that you learn early on, and I think if we'd been trying to learn that stuff while lots of people are listening and paying attention, it would have been quite difficult. But yeah, I mean, the first two albums were just me on my own, and nobody was really listening to it. Like, even the second album, I always joke that I sold one copy on release day, and it was to the guy that sat next to me at my work, and he was like, felt sorry for me and decided to buy an album. But yeah, we've just really gradually grown, and every album we've just thought, okay, how can we make this one better than the one before, and just continue improving. But equally, it's like enabled us to figure out our own path and our vision and like what it is we're doing, and it's easy to kind of allow that to be defined by other people sometimes, and especially when we're pursuing something that's a little different, like musically it sounds different to, I guess, what would be typical worship music, and at the same time it might sound like an indie electronic band, but the lyrics are clearly like worship songs. So I think even working with promoters and people like that, like, people didn't know where to place us for a while. They were like, do we book you in like a club venue or in a church, and like, where does this fit? We kind of said yes to a lot of things early on, and we'd go and do like leading worship for a conference, and then next week we'd be playing in a mainstream club venue and doing all the same songs. And we quickly began to figure out like, okay, this works here, doesn't work so well here, and just basically trial and error of like navigating our way through stuff, trying things out, and gradually realizing, okay, there's this little lane for ourselves and this little niche that we've carved out in like creative worship, and let's just explore that and figure out what that looks like. So that's kind of been our journey.
That's so cool. And you definitely said something that resonates with me, and that is just kind of blending the two areas of like pop or indie with worship and putting those into the same category. But there's not always a lot of context for that. So how have you kind of navigated those waters?
Yeah, it's been a fun challenge, and I think just sometimes people come on and try and like define what it is, or they'll say, okay, if you're going to be like a Christian band, then you need to perform a certain way, and you need to like do this kind of stuff. And we tried to listen to that for a while, and honestly just got so stressed out by like trying to be something that we're not. And on the other end of the scale, it's like, well, maybe we should be writing church songs, because these simple congregational ones are the ones that are working. And like it always seemed really complicated when we tried to force what it is, or say, okay, let's try and write this kind of thing. And everything just flowed more naturally when we kind of just create what comes out of just being four guys with instruments jamming in a room and writing what we feel passionate about, and just really trying to be ourselves, like on stage and off stage, and in every area of what we're doing, just trying to be uniquely us. And so I think there's been some challenges with it in some sense, and I kind of like the friction in some ways. I like that we'll go into a club venue where they probably never have Christian music, and we're singing worship songs, and I like at the same time that we can go into a church and like lead a worship time, and we're using all these like synths and samples and crazy stuff that they probably don't use on a Sunday morning. And I kind of like stretching both of those worlds. It's quite fun.
Man, that is so cool. And that's got to be really encouraging for people to hear. So let's kind of transition into your song creation process. Like, what does that look like for you? How do you come up with ideas? How do you kind of blend that into the recording side of things? If there is a typical process for you, I'd love to hear just more of how you create a song. Yeah.
I'm still very much like a bedroom writer, and I don't know if it's just because I started that way and I'm the most used to that, but I did one of these tests once. I think it's called Superpowers, and it's like it was designed to like see your strength within a team and the way that you work. And mine came out as an experimenter, and it said that I'm like the kind of person that likes to go away and like experiment with an idea on my own and like work in just like solitary environment, and then once it's developed, then I bring it into a more collaborative space. And I've definitely found that, like, I've done a few co-writing sessions in person, and I do enjoy them. It's like a very different way of writing. But the first few, I felt so out of my comfort zone because I was like, I don't know how to just bring an idea that isn't fully developed yet. And yeah, I feel much more at home, kind of just even songs coming to me in the car or the shower or whatever, like those kind of moments throughout the day where you just like pull out a phone and sing a voice memo, and just crafting those at home in my little studio. And then it tends to be once I've experimented a little bit and got something that's semi-developed, then I start sharing that, and whether it's with the band and we develop it, or I might think of another writer that I think would fit really well with the song, and we kind of bounce ideas back and forth that way. But
That's awesome.
yeah, I tend to be very like just juggling a lot of ideas in my home studio and figuring things out here.
I love that. And it sounds like you use your voice memo app about as much as I do. I just have idea after idea.
I'm trying to give them proper names, because most of mine are just like idea one, or like that bit with the chord, and I'm like, how will I ever remember what this is?
So something I talk a lot about is kind of that blend between the songwriting and the recording and production, and how those really can go hand in hand. And so kind of when and where does the songwriting meet the recording process for you?
Yeah, I'm very much on that same page of like the production almost happens at the same time as writing a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously not if it's a voice memo while I'm driving or something, then I won't be able to whip out an Ableton session. But I do find that, yeah, when I'm at home, some songs just start by literally opening up software and trying out chord progressions and drum loops, and I don't have any melody ideas at that point. I'm just trying out things, and then I just like plug in a microphone and start singing things and seeing what comes out. But I tend to be someone that starts with the music first, and it's normally a melodic or a musical idea that starts something off. And a lot of the time I'll just make loops, and like I really enjoy the production side of things. I'm a bit of a geek with that, so even if it's just like a hip hop beat or like a instrumental piano piece, like I just try and create a lot of stuff every week, just like little loops, little musical sections, and then I normally save all those in Dropbox just so I can listen to them wherever I'm at, and wait for like melodies to strike and then try and capture them and develop it into bigger song ideas. But yeah.
That's so cool. I'm like nodding my head and smiling really big the entire time because I resonate so much with what you're sharing. I can tend to be a music first person. I get inspired by different chords or melodies or beats or sounds. And then I'll write out these songs, and they kind of have words, but they kind of don't. And people see that a lot here on the channel. And so it's just really cool to hear you share that. And I think it's good to just say that and state that it's all right to be a music first kind of person. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think I used to feel a little bit guilty of like, ooh, I just have this melody and I'm just kind of singing faux words until I get the real words. And it's okay to do that. And I think it's not that you're devaluing lyrics or whatever. It's just a different way of working. You end up at the same place, but it's just kind of a different way of going about it. So on that note, let's kind of turn a corner and talk about Set Sail, where faith meets art, and kind of what you guys are doing, not only as creators, but now as kind of training, equipping, and encouraging the body to express their faith through art.
Yeah, so Set Sail kind of has two sides to it. And one side is the creating of our own art, and so whether that's the band Rivers and Robots, or the videos that we create and all this like content that we put out, just like the management of running a creative project in that sense. And the second half of it is like what you mentioned, it's trying to equip, encourage, and inspire other artists and creators. And I think even just through the band, we've been on a very like independent route and very much done the DIY thing of like writing the songs ourselves, recording in people's bedrooms, figuring out how to plan a tour and promote all that, and making videos. And we just have felt like we learnt things through that process of making mistakes and a lot of experimentation. And we wanted to be able to share that with other people. And so some of it is literally just taking a camera behind the scenes and showing like, this is how we do things, and trying to be really open with that whole process. And some of it is a lot more direct, like we'll write a tutorial or a blog on like how to do this thing. I think for us it's just, we started to meet a lot more creative people and noticed that this was just a dialogue and discussion that was going on a lot more the more we traveled around, that there were these like artists and creative people, particularly in the church, and not really much content or context for how that can be expressed other than you join the worship team or, you know, the kind of set structures that we had. But we were like, well, what about all these filmmakers and dancers and poets and all of these like amazing artistic people that might not have a natural outlet that it looks like in the church, but they're completely like creative and amazing and can do amazing things for the kingdom. And so we're like, well, let's figure out how we can actually help these people and at least like promote what they're doing, give a platform to it, tell people that it exists, and then as much as we can try and teach and help and run workshops. And one of the things we've loved doing, because our content's been very online, it's a lot of YouTube, a lot of stuff through our website and social media, but our big thing at the moment is trying to figure out how can we do this more in person. And even when we go on tours, like with the band, we'll try and take days in between to like gather creatives in a certain city and run a workshop and just get really practical on how we can help the people there, and even other creatives to meet each other in that place, and that could go on to great relationships and things in the future. But yeah, we're just passionate about like trying to be really open and teaching and equipping where we can. But yeah, that's what we try and do.
Well, that is just so cool, because I know I was really encouraged to connect with Set Sail. And I think part of it is just like you're saying, it's just knowing that other people are out there and starting a conversation with those people that, hey, like the way you express the Lord through your art is so valuable and so beautiful and so needed. And it doesn't have to look this certain way. It needs to look the way that the Lord has designed you to express it. So as a last question, what kind of advice would you give, maybe 3 tips, even though I know that sounds really cliche, to a Christian artist who's making music, who's writing, recording it, and yet it has this unique sound? It's pop, it's indie, it's folk, it's hip hop, whatever. Kind of what encouragement would you give to them to, you know, continue pursuing that calling and expressing their faith through their music?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say one of the first things would be like recognizing the uniqueness of who you are as an artist, and that you have this ability to like write songs that nobody else can write. And I just think one of the easiest traps to fall into is comparison, especially in our current world of like social media and everyone's sharing the highlights of their life and all of this stuff that they're making. And yeah, whether it's comparing yourself to someone else or even just the idea of what people think you should be doing, I think it's very easy to think, I have to make something that looks like this or sounds like this.
Right.
And I think I would just love to see more people being okay with like being really unique. And I think we'll see so much more diversity that way when we just tap into like what are those sounds and things that are just in me through the things that I've experienced and learned, and the things that surround me that are just like natural. Like when I just sit down to create something, this is what comes out, and freed from that pressure to have it look or sound a certain way. And the more we can be comfortable with that and releasing that, then I think we'll see really beautiful expressions of diversity and creativity through it. So I mean, it's a very practical one, but just practice, like in the sense of honing your craft and just like getting good at what you do. I think especially in the Christian space, it's very easy to like spiritualize a lot of the calling of like the music we create, and I'm doing this for the Lord and it's the heart and all that stuff, which is totally true and valid. But like there's definitely space for like just being a good musician and being like putting in the hours of learning the skill of it.
Absolutely.
And there's something actually really beautiful and honoring about that when we like take something that we've been given as a gift and develop it and like run with it. And it's like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And
so true.
If it's writing songs, just try and keep writing songs and keep putting in the hours. I think the third thing maybe I guess it's more of a heart thing to, I guess, contrast the practicality of the last one. But realizing that, like, the whole thing of creativity and what we're able to do, like, is a gift. And I think for any artist, especially, particularly once it starts getting noticed and, you know, people like what you're making, it's so easy to, like, get into that pride pattern or the ego thing and be like, oh, people like what I do, maybe I'm good at this stuff. And start realizing that, like, I don't know, start to think that it's fully because of us and what we're able to do that we can do this stuff. But I think one of my go-tos, definitely, like, as a believer, is John 15, where Jesus talks about, like, the vine and the branches. And with all the creative expression I do, I always picture it that way of, like, I can only do this because I'm connected to, like, the vine of Jesus, and, like, because he actually created us in his image to be able to create. Like, if he didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to write one song or, like, play anything musically, or, like, and yes, I might be putting in the time to develop that craft and get good at it, but I can literally only do this in the first place because it was a gift given to us. And it even ties into the comparison thing with that, because, like, as a branch in that sense, it's like, it could be easy to look at another branch and that other fruit that's going on and say, like, why doesn't mine look like that, or why am I not like this? But just realizing that we're all only able to do it because it's a gift. And I think that helps me to stay a lot more grounded. And, like, it's good for the encouragements to come and people to be blessed by what you're doing, and I love that. But yeah, just recognizing at the end of the day, it's all a gift has been very, like, grounding for me in that journey.
With that in mind, before we kind of close this thing out, why don't you share with us, how do we connect with Jonathan Ogden, with Set Sail, with Rivers and Robots? How do we connect with you, your music, and your training? Yeah,
so our ministry's website is timetosetsail.com. We have a YouTube channel called Set Sail as well. And then the band is Rivers and Robots with a little ampersand sign. And I guess I'm on social media as, like, J Ogden UK. So you can find me on the internet.
Well, thank you again, Jonathan, just for taking the time and just sharing some of your heart and your experience.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. It's been good.
So I hope this interview was a huge encouragement to those of you who are wanting to express the beauty of God through song and through art. And if you're new to this channel, I would love for you to stick around, as it's my goal to train and equip you in how to write and produce amazing music that allows you to express who God is and make an impact on your generation. And for watching all the way to the end of this video, I have a special treat for you. I'm going to be sharing a preview from one of my upcoming singles. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, you're beautiful, you're beautiful, you're beautiful. The Lamb of God, the Lord Most High, you're beautiful, you're beautiful, you're beautiful. This song is very close to the finish line, so stay tuned, as I'll definitely be sharing when it's released. So this is Dean signing out, and I'll catch you in another video. The fragrance of your name makes me love you more and more. Right, there's some